My wife and her brother siphoned off $250, $0 from my inheritance, then sued me for fraud over a property worth $500. $0 I never knew she was planning to sell behind my back. Now I'm facing bankruptcy and losing everything. I never thought I'd be the guy whose wife turns out to be sleeping with his brother and stealing his inheritance, but here we are. Honestly, the whole thing feels like a bad movie, except it's real, and I'm living through it. To give some context, my name is Mark and I married Lisa about 5 years ago. She's always been a bit high maintenance, pretty bitchy when she doesn't get her way, but I thought that was just her personality. She's the kind of woman who can lie straight to your face, act innocent, then turn around and accuse you of being paranoid when you catch her in a lie. At first, everything seemed normal. We had a good life, me working as an accountant, her managing her fashion boutique. We had some money saved up and I thought we were building a future. Then, about 6 months ago, I started noticing strange things. Small things, really. My bank account balance was fluctuating more than usual, and I'd find receipts for expenses I didn't recognize. Lisa was always busy, making excuses about her shop, but I could tell she was hiding something. She'd get defensive when I asked about the money, brushing it off with a snide comment like, "You're just paranoid, Mark. You always think the worst." Things got worse when I found out she'd been talking to her brother, Jason, more than usual. They'd always been close, but suddenly their texts and calls spiked. I'd see her sneaking around her phone more often, hiding her screen when I entered the room. Then I stumbled on something that made my stomach drop. I found a series of emails from Jason discussing siphoning off money from my inheritance, $250, I'd received from my grandmother's estate. I never even knew Lisa was planning this behind my back. The emails were detailed, talking about how they'd split the money, hide it in fake accounts, and use it to fund their own lives. That's when I started putting the pieces together. Lisa had been acting weird lately, especially around money. She'd always been generous with her lies, claiming she needed new clothes or shoes. But I knew she was hiding something. When I confronted her about the emails, she just laughed it off, saying I was overreacting, that Jason was just joking around. But I knew better. The more I dug, the more I realized she'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. She was a liar, a manipulator, and she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. The day I found out about her affair with Jason was the day everything shattered. I was at work when I got a text from a coworker saying Lisa was at a hotel with someone. I didn't even need to ask who. I already knew. I drove home fast, heart pounding, and caught her in the act, her and Jason in bed, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. They looked up at me, faces flushed, guilty but trying to act innocent. Lisa's eyes were cold, like she didn't even care I was standing there. That moment, seeing her with my own eyes, felt like being punched in the gut. All the trust, all the years, gone in an instant. I stood there speechless, trying to process what I'd just seen. My mind was racing. How long had this been going on? How much had I lost? Not just the money, but the woman I thought I knew. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was realizing I'd been played, used, and completely blindsided. I thought I knew her. I thought she loved me. Turns out she never did. She was just using me for my money, and her brother was right there, helping her. I felt numb, angry, and betrayed all at once. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that this wasn't going to end quietly. I had to plan my revenge, and I had to get my life back. After I saw them in that hotel room, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mind was racing with questions. How long had this been going on? How deep did the betrayal go? I felt like I'd been sucker punched in the stomach and then kicked while I was down. The image of Lisa and Jason, so carefree, so shameless, haunted me. I couldn't believe I had been so blind. All those years, I thought she was just a little bitchy but loyal, and now I find out she was sleeping with my own brother and stealing my inheritance behind my back. The first thing I did was confront her again, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. She was already lying, denying everything, twisting it around to make me look like the crazy one. She claimed I was paranoid, jealous, insecure. She told me I was imagining things, that she loved me and that Jason was just a friend she was helping out. Yeah, right. I could see through her bullshit. She's good at lying, that one. Always has been. The way she spun it made me realize I needed to be smarter, more calculated. I wasn't going to get the truth from her by yelling or accusing. I needed evidence, a plan. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her bank accounts. I wanted to see if there was more to this than just the affair and the siphoning of my inheritance. Sure enough, I found more. She'd been funneling money into accounts I didn't even know existed. Offshore accounts, fake companies, you name it. It was clear she was planning to run, to disappear with Jason, and to leave me with nothing. The thought of losing everything, my house, my savings, my credit, made me realize I had to act fast. If I didn't, I'd be bankrupt, homeless, and humiliated. That's when I started devising my plan. I knew I couldn't just confront her and expect honesty. She'd lie her way out of it, spin some story, cry her way into my pity. No, I needed leverage, proof, and a way to turn her own game against her. I remembered reading about how some people get revenge not by violence, but by exposing their enemies' secrets and manipulations. I decided I'd do the same. I'd show her that I wasn't some naive fool she could cheat on and steal from without consequences. My first move was to get a private investigator. I hired someone discreet to follow Lisa and Jason, gather evidence of their relationship, and track her financial activities. I also reached out to an attorney friend of mine, someone who specialized in financial crimes and inheritance disputes. I wanted to know what legal options I had, how I could freeze her accounts, and what steps I could take to reclaim my inheritance. The more I learned, the angrier I got. She lied about everything, and now I had proof that she'd been planning this for months. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, acting innocent in front of friends and family, pretending she was the victim. She'd call me paranoid or controlling whenever I brought up her strange behavior, but I knew better now. I saw through her lies and I knew she'd been playing me all along. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I had to be smart, patient, and ruthless if I wanted to get what I deserved. I wasn't just going to let her walk away with my money and my life. No, I was going to turn this around. I had to strike back hard, expose her, take her down, and reclaim what was mine. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this was about more than just money or betrayal. It was about my dignity, my sense of justice. I'd been a fool for trusting her, but I wasn't going to be a fool forever. I had a plan forming in my mind, one that would reveal her true nature, destroy her lies, and make sure she paid for what she'd done. I just had to wait for the right moment. Patience, I told myself, patience and precision. Then I'd strike and make sure she never betrayed me again. The days that followed were a blur of planning and anger. I couldn't believe how deep her deception went. She'd been lying to me for years, siphoning off my inheritance, and now she was sleeping with my brother, Jason. It was the kind of betrayal you read about but never think you'll experience firsthand. I kept replaying that moment I caught them in the hotel, the look in her eyes when she saw me. It was like she didn't even care I was there, like I was invisible. That coldness, that indifference, it cut me to the core. I realized I had to do something drastic. I couldn't just confront her. I had to destroy her lies and make her see that her actions had consequences. I decided to hire a private investigator. It wasn't cheap, but I needed hard evidence. Photos, videos, financial records, something that would stand up in court or at least make her realize I wasn't messing around. I gave him a list. Follow Lisa, track her movements, and dig into her financial dealings. I also instructed him to find out if she'd been in contact with anyone else besides Jason, just in case she had other plans. The reports started coming in a few days later, and what I saw made my blood boil. She'd been sneaking around, meeting with her brother late at night and siphoning money into new accounts. The evidence was clear. She was planning her escape, and she was dragging Jason along for the ride. At the same time, I reached out to an attorney friend, someone who specialized in inheritance disputes, financial fraud, and family law. I wanted to understand my options. Could I freeze her accounts? Could I sue her for fraud? How much of my inheritance was protected? The lawyer explained that I had a solid case for financial betrayal, especially since I had evidence of the siphoning. He also told me I could potentially get a court order to freeze her assets, which would buy me some time and prevent her from disappearing with the money. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I wasn't completely screwed. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, acting innocent around friends and family, crying about how I was accusing her without proof, spinning stories about how she was just stressed and trying to help her brother. It made me sick. She was a master manipulator, twisting everything to her favor, but I knew her game now. I'd seen too much, uncovered too many lies. I had the evidence and I was ready to use it. It was just a matter of timing. One night I set up a meeting with her, pretending I wanted to talk about us, about fixing things. I told her I knew about her affair with Jason and the money she'd stolen. Her face went pale for a second, then she started lying again, denying everything. I played along, acting like I was still in the dark. That was the moment I decided I'd reveal everything at once I had enough proof to blow her world apart. I wanted her to feel the fear, the guilt, the shame of being caught. I knew she was a bitch, but I also knew she was a coward. I was going to make her pay. I also started gathering my own evidence. I took screenshots of her emails, printed out bank statements, and recorded her phone calls where she was coordinating with Jason. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some naive fool anymore. I was turning the tables. I was going to expose her lies, her cheating, her theft. I had to be patient, though. This wasn't a game I could rush. I had to let her think she was still in control while I secretly built my case. Every day I felt more betrayed, more furious. I kept thinking about how she lied so effortlessly, how she manipulated everyone around her. She's good at it, she's always been good at lying, at pretending to be the victim. But I was done being naive. I was done being the fool. I knew I had to act fast, but I also knew I had to be smart. When the moment came, I'd strike hard and make sure she paid for everything she'd done. I wasn't just after the money anymore. I wanted her to understand that you can't lie, cheat, and steal without consequences. And I was the one who was going to make sure she learned that lesson. The tension was unbearable. Every night I laid awake, going over every detail, every lie she told, every piece of evidence I had collected. I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly. She was a liar, a manipulator, and a master at twisting the truth. I had to be surgical in my approach. My plan was to wait until I had everything in place: court orders, proof of her financial crimes, and enough dirt on her affair with Jason to blow her entire life apart. I wanted her to feel cornered, exposed, and ultimately humiliated. I kept my distance, pretending everything was normal while secretly orchestrating my move. I watched her every move, recorded her conversations, and kept tabs on her financial activities. The lawyer confirmed I could freeze her accounts if I presented enough evidence, and I was working on that behind the scenes. I also hired a forensic accountant to help me trace every dollar siphoned off, mapping out exactly how much she took and where it went. The amount was staggering: over $250, $0 gone from my inheritance, and I had proof she'd been funneling it into offshore accounts, fake companies, and even her own pocket. Everything was lining up for a legal takedown. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending to be the innocent wife. She'd cry, scream, and call me paranoid whenever I questioned her. She even tried to play the victim with friends and family, claiming I was jealous and controlling. It was pathetic. I knew her game now. She was trying to spin her lies, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I had enough evidence to bury her in court and ruin her reputation if I wanted. But I wanted more than that. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal. One evening, I got a call from the investigator. He had surveillance footage, photos of Lisa meeting with Jason late at night, and recordings of her discussing the money siphoning. It was perfect. I sat there, stunned, realizing I finally had everything I needed. I called my lawyer immediately, told him to prepare the paperwork. We were going to file for a court order to freeze her assets and start legal proceedings for fraud and embezzlement. I also planned to subpoena her emails and phone records to prove the affair and her scheme. The moment I finally confronted her face-to-face was intense. I told her I knew everything about her affair, her lies, the money she stole, and her plans to run away. Her face twisted with anger and denial. She spat out lies, claiming I was paranoid, that she loved me and was only trying to help her brother. I let her talk, knowing I'd soon have her cornered. I kept my cool, playing the part of the betrayed husband while secretly savoring the moment I'd finally expose her. I told her I had proof, every email, every recording, every bank statement, and that I was going to make sure she paid for her treachery. She tried to cry, to manipulate, to guilt-trip me into backing down, but I was past that. I saw her for what she was, a liar, a thief, a cheat. I told her she could keep pretending, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I warned her that I was going to take everything from her money, her reputation, her freedom if I had to. That's when she finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Her eyes flickered with panic, and for the first time I saw genuine fear. That was the moment I knew I had her right where I wanted her. I was finally going to make her pay for everything she'd done. The legal process moved quickly once I had everything in place. My lawyer filed the paperwork to freeze her accounts and start the fraud investigation. I could see the panic in Lisa's eyes when she realized I wasn't bluffing anymore. She tried every trick in the book, begging, crying, claiming I was ruining her life, but I wasn't interested in her sob stories. I knew her game now. She lied to everyone, manipulated her way through life, and thought she could get away with everything. Well, not this time. Over the next few days, I watched her unravel. Her phone was seized, her bank accounts frozen, and her carefully constructed lies started falling apart. The evidence was irrefutable. Emails, recordings, bank statements, all pointing to her scheme to siphon off my inheritance, cheat on me with Jason, and then try to escape with the money. The court hearings were scheduled, and I knew it was only a matter of time before she faced the consequences. Meanwhile, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief because I finally had control, and rage because I had been so blind for so long. I remembered how she'd lied about everything, about her relationship with Jason, about her financial dealings, about her intentions. She had been planning this for months, maybe years. I also realized how much I'd been emotionally invested in a lie. I thought I knew her, but I was just a fool. That realization hurt, but it also pushed me to see this as a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my life from the ashes of her betrayal. One night, she confronted me, trying to manipulate me into dropping the charges. She begged, pleaded, even accused me of destroying her life, all while trying to turn me into the villain. I looked her dead in the eyes and told her she had no one to blame but herself. I explained that her lies, her cheating, and her theft had consequences. I told her I'd take everything she'd stolen, and I'd make sure she never did this to anyone again. She screamed, called me cold, said I was ruining her reputation. None of it mattered anymore. The damage was done, and I was going to make sure she paid. As the process moved forward, I started to feel a strange sense of closure. I was ready to walk away, too. Leave her behind and focus on rebuilding my life. I knew I'd need therapy, time, and a lot of patience, but I was determined to come out of this stronger. I'd learned the hard way that trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight back. Not with violence, but with facts, evidence, and a clear plan. That's what I did. I fought for what was rightfully mine, and I refused to let her steal any more from me, emotionally, financially, or otherwise. Looking back, I realize how much this has changed me. I'm more cautious now, more guarded, but also more aware of the kind of person I don't want to be involved with. I've lost a lot: money, trust, a marriage I thought was forever, but I've gained clarity. And I know I'll be okay. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar learns that you don't have to accept betrayal quietly. Stand up, gather your evidence, and fight for your life. Because in the end, justice might be delayed, but it's never denied. The court case dragged on for months, but in the end, everything played out exactly as I had hoped. Lisa and Jason's lies unraveled completely. The judge saw through her manipulations, and the evidence I presented was overwhelming. She was found guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The court ordered her to pay back every penny she siphoned off, over $250, $0, and to cover legal damages for the emotional toll. Her reputation was trashed publicly, and she was ordered to stay away from me and my property. The whole process was brutal, but I felt a strange sense of relief knowing I'd finally taken control. Losing her was a blow, more than just the betrayal. It was the end of a chapter I thought was forever. But honestly, I felt lighter. The weight of her lies, her manipulations, and her theft was finally lifted. I moved out of the house we shared, sold some of her belongings, and started rebuilding my life from scratch. It wasn't easy, and there were days I felt like giving up, but I knew I had to keep going. I learned a lot from this experience about trust, betrayal, and resilience. I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone just for the sake of it. It's about justice, about reclaiming what was stolen and making sure the other person pays for their actions. I didn't do it to destroy her entirely, though she certainly deserved a lot of punishment. I did it so I could finally breathe again, so I could believe in honesty and integrity. I want others to know that no matter how deep the betrayal, you can come out the other side stronger if you stay focused and don't lose sight of your worth. Now, I'm rebuilding my finances, my confidence, and my life. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, but I'm also focusing on my future. I've learned to be more careful about who I trust, and I refuse to let someone else's lies define me. I still have scars, but they're reminders of how far I've come. I don't regret standing up for myself, even if it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Sometimes, the only way to survive betrayal is to fight back with everything you've got. Looking back, I realize I was lucky in a way. I found out the truth before she could do even more damage. I got my inheritance back, I exposed her lies, and I took control. It's a brutal lesson, but one I wouldn't trade for anything. If you're reading this and going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to fight for your right to be treated with honesty and respect. Because in the end, justice isn't just a word. It's what keeps us sane when everything around us seems to fall apart.